Experts in connecting folks because they don't have capacity right now, and I was like, yep, cool. Yeah, I don't really see how much we have as a Chicago.
A little bit closer for the first time in I don't know how long it's been, months, 10 years, I don't know. It's just every day.
Every day, but yeah.
Because I can't work.
And I was like,
I'm a call she's Sally. Might be Sally. I'm going to give you. Very good. I got to feel what happened was I'm paying 2 bills of food. One of the bills, the greens are good, but so you go in but it's saying the same thing. And it's but it's more than I want to be. I'm going to call her. I told the guy to up there. I'm going to give her a call. See if you want to come out and you guys can get it's California broadleaf, it's a mustard green. Let me call her. In fact, I wanted to come on that. Okay. Well, if not, if you see her, tell her call me. I've seen her Saturday. Tell her call me. You saw me. Call me. Okay, you just got to bring about 4 or 5 people to pick up. Hold on, thank you, sir. All right, ladies.
no, I'm going to be. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm on the brink.
See the price? See how we got it? I told you. I was there about 2 months ago. It's not like all about yeah, I was there. My area of ministry.
Hello? Oh, there we go. I can hear you now. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in. This session is Remaining Resilient. Refocusing Our Advocacy in a Changed Landscape. I'm Tyler Edwards, and I'm so glad to be here today with Marguerite and Colleen Hanlon-Smith, who will be our panelists in just a little bit. But we're going to start off with me talking for a little bit about federal advocacy, and then we will also talk about options for state and local advocacy, and all of this is centered around federal, around food procurement funding in the wake of the loss and cancellation of LFPA and LFS. Okay, so before we get started, I want to do a little bit of a check-in about advocacy. In federal, I'm going to talk about federal advocacy. I'm with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But yes, so I'm going to ask you to raise your hands for a 0, a 1, or a 2, based off of how confident you feel with the various tasks. So 0 is like, I don't think I would do that. That sounds pretty scary. 1 is for, I think I can figure that out. And 2 is, I've done this before, I'm a pro, or I'm pretty confident that I can do that. So first, raise your hand if you're at a 0 for emailing your member of Congress to ask them to support a bill, like that to be introduced or to become a co-sponsor. 0s, okay. Who's at a 1? Like kind of confident, could do it, okay. Who's at a 2? Okay, a mix, good. Next, showing up at your member of Congress's office in person in their district or in DC. Who's at a 0? Like, would not do that. Okay. Who's at a 1? Like, no, I can maybe do that. And 2, like, I've done it before, I do fly-ins every month. Okay, yeah, okay. So mix. And for the last one, inviting your members of Congress to an event that you host. Who's at a 0? Would not invite them. Okay. Who's at a 1? Like, I'd think about it. Okay. And who's at a 2? Okay, so you all saw the hands. We're at different levels of comfort here, and all of us have a role to play when it comes to advocacy. Even if you are at an organization that's not able to do advocacy, you can probably do education, or you can share information to other people who can. So, again, welcome. I'm Tyler Edwards with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. This is me. You can't see it that well, but there's a cute picture of me and my coworkers in the background there. But we are in an alliance of more than 160 different grassroots organizations in 40 states and Puerto Rico. And we come together to advocate for federal policy reforms that benefit sustainable farmers and food systems workers around the country. These are a few of our members. Raise your hand if you see somebody that you recognize. Yeah, okay, good, nice. This is a small selection. They're just the logos that I can find. So we have a lot more. And there's probably one near you. Okay, so we're here today, like I said at the beginning, to talk about funding for local food procurement. My organization in the past couple of years, or not past 2 years, but like past few years, has been very much focused around LFPA funding. Raise your hand if you had some involvement with LFPA. Okay, yeah. Okay, quite a few. Yes, as you all know, this was a very successful program, though the rollout looked very different among the 50 states. And the degree to which it was successful also varied a lot. But in many places, it was a program that allowed farmers to expand their businesses, to scale their businesses, to sell into wholesale markets for the first time. And for those of you who are here with food banks, it created partnerships between farmers and aggregators and distributors and the anti-hunger world. And all of that in support of feeding our neighbors and feeding students and also children in child care centers. So the funds for LFPA 2025 and LFS child care centers were canceled on March 7th of this year, though funds for the previous round still flowed, and the USDA approved no-cost extension requests for states and cooperators. The USDA still has no plans to restore this funding, though there are 2 lawsuits that are challenging LFPA 25's termination, the New Jersey versus OMB case, as well as the Shapiro versus USDA case. They are very much still in progress. Speaking of other progress, NSAC earlier this year delivered a letter with more than 1,000 farmers and nonprofits and other kinds of advocacy and impacted organizations to Secretary Rollins in order to highlight the negative impacts of canceling these programs. That statement showed that in other words, that is to say that canceling LFPA, we wanted to make it very clear, was an action in direct opposition to these communities' needs. Okay. So, that leads me to what we're trying to do now. Okay. So I asked who was involved in the LFPA, and I bet that many of you that were involved in the LFPA are now thinking about what do we do now? Like, we had this funding that allowed us to make these incredible connections. Farmers were counting on this. Many organizations that I've spoken to have told me about how much trust was lost in their community in the wake of the cancellation of these funds, about how farmers were already investing in their businesses in expectation of those reliable contracts from LFPA coming through again, and then they found themselves in a lurch. So, what do we do? For NSAC, we are federally focused, and so we are still thinking about the Farm Bill. As you all know, the Farm Bill expired on the same day that the government shutdown came on September 30th. That was an extension of the Farm Bill. It should have been passed years ago. It was not. We aren't just sitting on our heels waiting for there to be another Farm Bill and not doing anything else with our advocacy. We are still putting in plans in place so that if Farm Bill negotiations come in the future, that we'll already have our infrastructure and conversations in play so that we'll be ready to get going. So, our goals right now are to establish congressional support for local food procurement funding and food assistance programs beyond LFPA and LFS, and specifically mandatory funding, so that we wouldn't be left in this kind of position again. So there's two bills, one for the Senate and one for the House. In the Senate, we have the Strengthening Local Food Security Act with two co-sponsors, one Democrat and one Republican. And in the House, we have the Local Farmers Feeding Our Communities Act with 53 co-sponsors. Whoa! And that includes 37 Democrats, let me make sure I got my numbers right, 36 Democrats and 17 Republicans, including Chuck Edwards, and I believe we're in his district right now. So we are, as you can see through this little chart, these bills are similar but have some key differences. One of the differences that isn't reflected here is what target farmers mean. For the Senate, that definition includes historically underserved farmers, but the bill in the House does not. For all of the differences that you see here, if the Farm Bill does come, they would be aligned and discussed when it comes into conference between both in the agriculture committees and later on when it goes to the floors. So these are the bills that we're advocating for at the moment. So our tactics, our toolbox that we're using here, some of it is our typical kind of lobbying Hill meetings. My colleagues on our policy team are going into offices on Capitol Hill and explaining to members of Congress directly why it's so important for them to sponsor these bills and talking about the impacts of the LFPA and of LFS and about what the future of federal funding for local food procurement could look like. We are also connecting with our members to also amplify those messages and have them so that the legislators will hear directly from their constituents. And we are asking our members to talk to the press and spread the message on social media, because we know that legislators are paying attention to the local press so that they know what their constituents care about, and we know that their constituents care about this funding. So, I'm mentioned that I work for a coalition, and a lot of the materials that we make are just for our members. But we put together a toolkit that is for anyone to use that has information about these bills, as well as an action portal that you can share with anybody. You can share the whole toolkit with anybody that you want to, and as part of taking action. Also, we have a lot of information on our blog at sustainableagriculture.net for anyone that might be interested in learning more about the impact of these bills, or if you want to point your member of Congress or anyone that you might be talking to, members of the press, to more stories about LFPA. We've done, last year we spent several weeks collecting stories about the LFPA from around the country. So if you search for LFPA on our website, quite a few press releases and blogs will come up. Okay. So that is the federal side of this advocacy. And now, as I mentioned, the options available at the federal level are stalled as Congress is shut down right now. And both here at this conference and at other conferences that I've been to in the past few weeks, have been so inspired and so energized to turn to state and local advocacy. None of us have time to wait for the federal government to make up their mind, so that we have farmers and neighbors that need food. So I am excited for Colleen and Marguerite to talk to us about what their advocacy at the state and local level has looked like. And yeah, you guys can come over and I'll ask you some questions. Yeah, but first off, I should sit over here.
Shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah. But first off, I'll just pass the mic for y'all to introduce yourself.
My name is Colleen Hanlon-Smith, and I'm from Freedom, Maine. Hey y'all, my name is Marguerite or Marguerite Green, and I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay. So my first question for you all is, what are the roles of advocacy organizations in local procurement work? And if you could tell us about your organization's roles in this work.
So I represent a couple different entities. One of my distribution businesses, Daybreak Growers Alliance, was a recipient of LFPA funds. And we joined with other entities across the state that lost that funding to form something called Farm to Neighbor Maine. Farm to Neighbor Maine is looking at grassroots, state, and federal, not one or the other, but all three, to make sure that we have multiple options of how we can fundraise, advocate, educate the general public around the good work that's happening through LFPA. And happy to speak more to any details about that. Sure. So I work for the Louisiana Food Policy Council. We're a pretty new organization in that we are an outgrowth from the New Orleans Food Policy Council, which has actually existed for nearly 20 years. Prior to March of this year, which our state session started in April, but prior to March, I was at a farmer technical assistance organization called Sprout. That's an NSAC member for 9 years, and we worked on developing the LFPA, and we worked on getting the LFPA's technical assistance side set up in Louisiana. But in terms of the advocacy that we did, so I made this year-long transition from the sort of technical assistance side to the policy side to kick off our state's Food Policy Council. And if you guys can put that timeline together in your head, I started in March, executive orders started in January, LFPA is cut on the 7th, and then our state session started on, I think, April 12th, if I remember correctly. So it was just sort of like everything is happening, and we felt that feeling that I think all of us are feeling every day now, which is like, okay, we just have to do something. So in terms of what our role was in advocacy, we're the Comprehensive Food Policy Council. We're the only organization that's explicitly looking at the whole food system, not just one component of it, not just who the LFPA feeds or the farmers that it gets money to for their goods. We're thinking about how this affects the whole food system and the distributors and
you know, the farmers markets that are then getting more farmers because they have more access to more stable markets and on and on. So I guess in terms of the question, should I answer what we did, or are we then gonna, are you gonna,
Yeah,
like, I feel like then I need to pass it back to Colleen. Let's
do
go. Okay. So what we did was we immediately wrote bill text that was in support of like the food system markets. It wasn't just about LFPA, because we weren't just trying to address LFPA, we were trying to address all of the food system failures that were happening simultaneously, and the anticipation that we had for the attacks that would come against SNAP. Like, we kind of saw the whole deck stacking up. And so we know that we're in a rural state, a largely rural state, we're in a red state, and so we thought what works in this situation in terms of advocacy is leaning into our pride in food production, is leaning into how we want to support the farmers. We know that it's not always a popular message, whether it should be or not, to feed people, but it is always a popular message to support farmers. I think, you know, both the Republican and Democratic parties would say, like, they're the party of farmers. So I was like, let's focus on the middle ground that we have. And so we wrote this bill in support of Louisiana's farmers and the multitude of outlets through which they sold their food. It's called Farmers First. It, you know, passed immediately. It had no funding attached to it, and that was purposeful. We put forward this resolution, and we got the Speaker of the House to put it forward. And this is where I think a lot of like long game stuff is important. He had also been the person who had introduced a resolution that we put up years earlier to do state-supported SNAP matching at markets called Grow the Good. So we really leaned into this idea that like we're developing a partner in our state legislature who is becoming a farmer champion and is making that depoliticized to do. And so Jack McFarland is who introduced Farmers First for us. And the bill, very intentionally, it mentions LFPA, but it also mentions roadside stands. It mentions Grow the Good. It mentions floral growers. Like, we're just like, the state of Louisiana cares about its farmers, and we're really bummed out by the lack of federal programs and the cutting of federal programs that is hurting our farmers. And then we simultaneously made a request for appropriations. So the idea was write the bill, get everybody on board with the popular idea, nobody wants to say they don't like farmers, and then submit an appropriations request to be able to use that money to actually support our farmers in myriad ways, right? Not just in a replication of LFPA, but just by addressing the whole food system. So that's also, it looked like RFSI was going to be canceled at that moment. LFS was canceled, LFSCC, LFPA. So we weren't like, let's fix one problem, because it was very clear to us that this administration was going to cause lots of problems for local food systems. Yeah, so that's what we did.
So excited to be learning, because if you can't tell from me furiously writing notes, our work at Farm to Neighbor has been at the local grassroots level, and we'd love to tell you a little bit about that. And we are about to prepare for what Margie is in the fray of. So I'm like, how did you do this? Where are you at? Because we're preparing for our next legislative session. So let me just tell you a little bit about on the ground grassroots. So we stood up, March 7th, federal funding freeze. We stood up Farm to Neighbor within 6 weeks of that freeze. Came together, put up the website, and we decided, actually, our state's food bank had been brought in at the last minute of LFPA funding to serve as an administrator for LFPA, whether that was needed or not. It was how it was structured. And our Department of Agriculture administered the funds. So none of us knew, unless we were talking to each other, who was getting what, how the decisions were getting made, all of that. So when we stood up Farm to Neighbor Maine, we said, we want to split these funds equitably. We want to be in this together. And we also left 20% reserve for bringing in other partners that we meet along the way, which is yet to happen, that we're bringing in other partners as we build and as there's opportunity to. We recognize that there's other entities on the ground doing this work. 10% of it was saved for fiscal management and campaign management. So 5% are our fiscal sponsor, Brunswick, Maine-based Full Plates, 5% to peak season, one of my companies that's a distribution business, but has a lot of interests outside of that. And so kind of under the vein of consulting services, it was an opportunity to have a non-LFPA recipient be the entity that held the campaign management part of it. I'll tell you, it covered the cost of the website and a few pieces of it, but it's largely been a labor of love, of course, and the other business as an LFPA recipient. So we stood this up within 6 weeks. We decided we wanted to be equitable about the distribution of these funds, and then we engaged our food system. So some traditional paths of funding, like foundations and grants were sought, but also like roundup programs and menu items at restaurants throughout the state of Maine. I just was getting tagged in a post today for a bakery outside of Portland that is using the flint corn grown by the Somali Bantu farmers that are part of Farm to Neighbor Maine. That flint corn is milled by Maine Grains, that does the processing to put out this super tasty looking cornbread with Maine blueberries inside of it, and a percentage of all those sales moving forward will go to Farm to Neighbor Maine. Daybreak, actually, when all of this went down, Daybreak's one of my other businesses. Our Cornerstone program is a CSA. I'm so sorry if this is redundant to those of you that were in the past session. I'm attempting to bring in new information. But Daybreak actually implemented a delivery fee for our CSA or Farm Box program, which is something we wanted to do forever, and took $1 of that $2.75 delivery fee and said, this is going to our food access programming. We're always waiting for people to tell us what we're gonna get for funding in this. Like, those days are done. Like, how do we take agency of this? And so 25 cents of that goes to our Cornerstone partnership, Walden County Bounty, that I founded with some community members at the county level in response to the pandemic back in 2020. 25 cents of that goes to Farm to Neighbor Maine, and this isn't just this year. This is every year that it exists, year after year, to sort of serve as an example for other businesses. We're stepping up, can you help us too? And all of us food businesses run on tight margins, and so the nice thing with like a menu item is they can bump that price up and not lose their margin, right? It's passed on to the customer if the restaurant that's partnering with us needs to. So really just a couple examples of how we engage the food system and the community in helping us with this. And what that translated to is that our farm partners who were most dependent on this, some of them, as I mentioned in the previous session, up to 70% of their sales income for the year, just sold as much, if not more, this season than they have any other season before, and got paid for it. Daybreak, the entity that I represent up in Central Maine, hasn't spent our allocation of that funding yet. And so we are about to launch, like I'm back in the hotel room organizing the 20 different locations where we're launching a give-a-box matching funds that will serve our immediate county, but also all 5 tribal communities throughout our state, a variety of different grassroots initiatives that we are working with to spread the word, to get that food out into the community, doing our part in response to all of this SNAP foolishness that is rolling out. And so, again, we want grassroots, we want state, and we want federal, but we don't want to wait. And so we definitely took this into our own hands to do something about it, and to join together, recognizing that we're going to be stronger together than separate during these insane times. So I'll stop there, but just encourage all of you to just like, let's go, let's do this. And let's push it at the state, and let's wait for that farm bill to maybe do something, but let's do all 3 in every single state.
Absolutely. Wow. I just love listening to y'all. Look at that. Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
I want to do.
Yeah, things I want to do. Yeah. And look at that. Like, we're here like at this conference to talk about community. And I hear so much community, like in both of your stories. And I am curious about the role that like narrative and messaging plays on that, both for receptive audiences and for audiences that you have to persuade. So what narratives have been successful for you?
Well, I think you were speaking to like farmers are like safe ground across party lines. I would echo that. We're largely a white state, so like we've pulled in like all of the different partners. And agriculture in our state is a very diverse undertaking, but have to be honest, like we are purple for sure, especially as you go inland. And so, you know, I'd echo that like everyone loves a farmer, even if they don't love a handout, or even if there is bigotry that can be a barrier towards the work that we do in unifying. I'd also say like we're right out front about it and we don't really care. There's no language we're not going to use to talk about how to support marginalized farmers, and maybe that tack needs to change at the state or federal or policy level, and that's going to be a hard thing to have to navigate, but I don't know if I'm willing or not to do that, you know what I mean? So I'd love to hear from you as to like, how does this go down when there is friction?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, like what messaging and code switching means and what it's for. And like, this is a thing that I've found I need to say out loud when we're working with partners so that it lands for them, is that like a policy council is really helpful in both. When you think about your partners who are like maybe more afraid of equity language, and then your partners who are like less afraid, who are like, I'm not gonna not say that in a room. I can't conscionably not say that in a room, even if I know it's a deal breaker for being in that room. And to give you guys context, like I don't work with the weak of heart. Like Clay Higgins is someone that I have to meet with sometimes, and if you don't know who he is, it's because he's so far right wing that he's not even considered like a serious person. Like you don't see him in the news because he doesn't do real things. Like he said that you should get your driver's license taken away for saying something about Charlie Kirk, right? Like that's the kind of legislators that we work with. And so if with what you're saying, like if we were to go into a room and have a partner who like was unwilling to talk about a program without it having very clear equity guidelines, which we all know are things that are being slashed on the federal level, like the meeting wouldn't work, right? And so what a policy council or what any sort of coalition can be, if everyone is strategic and thinks about it, is a proxy for whatever is needed in any given moment. So for our very conservative partners who have folks who work, and when I say very conservative, we're talking in a food space, right? I just mean more traditional partners. Like when we're in a room where they might have morals or values that they can't actually share because of a party line or because it's a non-starter for them, then like we can literally lead conversations and they can be like, I didn't say that, she said that. Like, look at my weird food policy council. And then on the other side of that, like Colleen, if you were to be like, I can't go into that room and not pick a fight, which is like a super fair thing to say, and I have said that myself.
Or at least up here, right? Like,
right.
You know?
Like you can send us into that room so that like with the farmer, like the specific farmer that you're like, oh, actually that person can go into this room, like I'll be getting a cup of coffee. So working in coalition, whether it's a council, whether it's like a grassroots coalition, those are really important spaces. And I always say this too, is like you have to norm on it, right? Like if you're gonna take cover for someone or someone's gonna use your organization as cover, like if you're gonna send me in to say like, it's racist that you cut this program, and then you need to have distance from me for your organization, like we have to say that to each other. We have to say, okay, the Louisiana Food Policy Council is gonna go into this room, they're gonna name it. They're gonna call out that it's this, and then everyone is gonna not follow them. But now the word has been said, and vice versa for you guys. So I just think that that is why we work together, is we have to have multiple tactics and strategies for everything that we do. And we have to know that we need to speak truth to power, and there are also strategies for getting what we want to get done. And the only place in which those things can't work together is if we think everything has to have one pathway of communication or one unified voice. All we need as like people who work in movement spaces is communication and trust with each other. And if we move like with intentionality and respect to each other, then we can actually achieve both standing in our values and mincing our words when we need to. Yeah. What was the question?
I think you answered it. I was just, the question was just asking, like, what narratives are
Oh,
successful?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you were just sharing all
There
that.
it is, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, just like letting farmers speak is like
Yeah.
letting farmers
Do
speak
it.
is the way to do it. Yeah, they even if they go on for a really long time, which farmers do. I say that as a farmer myself. So yeah, filibustering like I'm doing now. Tyler, back to you.
Okay, so our last question for me is thinking about next steps. So when it comes to supporting local food procurement advocacy, what feels achievable in the next 2 years? Like just to shrink it down a little bit.
When it comes to, I'm just gonna say it out loud for a second. When it comes to fulfilling local food procurement advocacy, what feels achievable? So LFPA and beyond, basically. At any level.
Yeah, any level.
I'm psyched about the state level. I know I said it in the session before, but you know, we went down the path of really needing to throw some weight behind LFPA because it didn't have a state counterpart at all, and LFS does in Maine, the local food fund. And in Maine, our state doubled down on that fund. We also have free school meals. Is anyone from Colorado in here? Congratulations if you are joining us number 10. Someone's got to be at this conference from Colorado. I was psyched to see that. School meals, the school policy at the state level feels very, very achievable to keep moving forward for sure. I think, you know, where we're at in Maine is there are a multitude of different interests, just like there are in your state, whether it's nutrition incentives, which was the second half of my 20s, was standing up that programming at farmers markets, is near and dear to my heart, but it's a bit siloed from where our interests are at LFPA, from the bill that is not earmarked for the food bank, but always goes to the food bank, and they have great programming. They're the backbone of Maine. We only have one in Maine, but they pay commodity price points to farmers, which a lot of farmers cannot partake in that programming. So our next steps, and I'm so curious to hear from the audience, is to figure out how to basically weave these together, similar to what you did, Margie. You say it's not just LFPA, these are actually really synchronous programs that all depend on each other and that farmers depend on and that eaters depend on for food access, and to be looking at a holistic lens of them across. So I think schools, feeling really good about, and I think the rest, psyched to see you guys next year already and tell you how it goes and hear from you how it's going on your end.
Yeah, I want to really double down on schools. That feels like both incredibly critical when we think about all the other nutrition and hunger cuts that are happening, is like, where can we reach kids and make sure that they get like a healthy, nutritious meal at least once or twice a day. And so I feel like personal propulsion towards making sure that we get healthy local food purchasing in schools. And I think, even though it has not panned out for us yet, I'm not naive, but there is like a lot of narrative or rhetoric coming from this administration about what kind of food we are giving our children and about what kind of food our institutions are providing for people. So I think that, you know, if we're looking for silver linings, and again, I truly am not trying to be naive, but like, we gotta grab what we can, you know, we gotta make hay while the sun shines, as they say. So I think farm to institution, because it also is, I also think that like any kind of policy or any kind of program that we can like fit pretty cleanly into capitalism is like an easy lift for people to imagine. I think things like LFPA were on the chopping block because they were about people freely receiving food. And that's not me saying I think that's good or bad. Well, I think that's objectively good, actually. I've remembered where I am. But like, I can let my guard down. No, but I think that that's why using these sort of supplemental programs that give institutions money to do purchasing is maybe an easier win. But I would say that like, I weirdly have some sort of faith that we can do this in terms of getting LFPA programs back or getting them into mandatory funding LFPA-like programs, because I think that what we know is that they were popular and they worked largely. There were absolutely things that we need to change about them, but they were popular and they worked, and we have a lot of really wonderful advocates for them. So I think that if we can do it right for whenever this farm bill happens, that we have an opportunity to just get them in under another name.
Yep.
Right? And like we all just need to coalesce behind being like, it's fine, you can call it what you want to call it. Can we have LFPA back? Like, yeah, we're gonna do the good work on the ground. You can call it whatever you want to call it. And so that to me is, I like have a bizarre level of faith that we're gonna win.
Yeah, I think like just echoing back basically what you're saying, like everyone loves a farmer, which is why you might position them to be the one talking in the room. Everyone loves a kid, right? Like, and if you don't, you look really bad. So like, I think, you know, like that's like, yeah, exactly, you'd have to. And I also sort of feel an odd sense of like hope as well. That sort of, was anyone like at the Hill or doing the work with Wholesome Wave when Gus Schumacher was around? And yeah, so, and the across the aisle bipartisan support for sort of the economic investment in farmers and in local food, that case was really made strongly and had support on both sides of the aisle, and I feel like we could thread the needle on this one in a similar way.
I also I don't think that this is good or worth it in any way, but I think the loss of these programs now gives us something to work with in terms of look what happens when you take it away. And so again, I feel like I've sound so moderate in this room, but just being able to have the data, the impact that we should never have had to live through, and that was totally not worth it, but we do have information now about what happens when you invest in farmers, and so I hope that we leverage that really well.
Alrighty, I think we have time for one or two questions for the audience, if anyone has one.
And or please share with us
Yeah.
about how you're navigating this too, if it's more of a comment than a question.
And then after that, we will move into some table discussion. Yeah.
I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'm just curious, are you working with Good Shepherd Food Bank, and they have their Mainers Meeting Mainers program?
Yep. So Good Shepherd, it's a small state.
Yeah.
So we all work together, and Heather Peckett and I have talked and whatnot. Good Shepherd has made a shift to really having so Mainers, and Nancy Perry, who's run the program forever, is amazing. George Fox, who's the head of their trip, all of them are wonderful. And there's been really sort of an exclusion on the only state funding and the garnering and the lobbying that really excludes a lot of folks that are on the ground at the intersection of, as I sound like a broken record, both feeding people and farm viability. And so that's the battle that we're about to enter, or not the battle, but that's the conversation we need to enter into with folks who are a critical part of our food system, but we hope can really start including us and seeing us as part of the long term, and even logistically lifting the burden for them in terms of the ability to work on the ground. Maine is such a geographically dispersed state that I'm talking to them trucking services, can we pay you for those half-empty trucks that are going up, and can you make money that way instead of sort of bogarting all of the funding and at the state and foundation level. So if I'm being recorded, hello Heather, we'll have this conversation soon. Thanks for asking the question.
Anybody else? Okay, awesome. So now we are we're going to move into some table discussions. First, before we do, I just want to say thank you to Colleen and Marguerite. And yeah, for our table discussions, there are a few worksheets. I have more if you want one. But yeah, we're going to have some discussions around what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are when it comes to your organization's advocacy around this. And thinking first about who are the people in your state who are deciding what foods to buy for schools, early childhood education, and where are they on this spectrum of opposed, persuadable, or aligned to the vision, our shared vision of having money for local food procurement that from farmers. Also, starting to brainstorm what stories or arguments might persuade them to move, thinking back to the question that I just asked about narrative. How do we get them on our side if they aren't already? And then, what are, for your organization specifically, what are your current strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities in making those arguments? And then lastly, what are the threats? Like, what would stop you from being successful? And then in about 20 minutes, I'll ask for one person from each table to share. Is it more strategic for your organization to pursue state or federal advocacy or some combination? Right. So let's get into it. And also, those are also the instructions for the table leaders. If you're not already at a table, you can feel free to join one. Absolutely. Any questions before we get started?
Do you have worksheets?
Yeah, I have some more. I'll be right over. Tyler, thank you.
Where y'all are. Here's cues. You're you can all do this together. You guys want
I can make some pretty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. We work with Cooperative Extension. We're AmeriCorps.
You had to say that now. You're not down.
well, I work with NC State, and I'm at the agroecology division. I think the most food access that relate to this is that we donate a lot of food. Our food.
I'm a fiber baby. I was told to be like a facilitator. Me too.
That's right. So, what about y'all? That's fine. We're really kind of comfortable.
Based out of A&T, NC A&T, which is one of our
I'm a great writer too, so definitely.
And our mission with an extension is supporting under-resourced farmers across the state. HBCUs, we work a lot on farmers, of course a lot of change. Because I've worked for the state, I can't advocate, but I can educate. So I work a lot with food councils and other groups across the state, just to make sure that the voices of our farmers are being heard at those different levels. But again,
Participate in the LMP program. And so trying to figure out what it looks like. So our farmers are not having that funding anymore. So that's really
So we have not, farmers have not been involved in direct advocacy.
like in North Carolina.
I know the
Typically, like there's a
food
lot
federal
of the state budget that we get every year that like is basically, Feed Carolina is a little.
there are some
Last year we
agreements,
got
LFPA
$70,000.
agreements.
That's really nothing.
And
That's
I
a
know
big
in our proposed, there's some commitments to purchasing food from local farmers.
Not just that. I think that was going the supplements for North Carolina. That was going towards lots of different things, but a lot of it was procurement, not necessarily from farmers. What we try to do is work with farmers as well. Just because it's a little strategic. Like for our CBO, like it makes a lot of sense to understand just like For the LFA fund, we use that solely to advocate
space.
Yeah, so like I'm not sure if all the section like farmer food sharing, like that was one of the goals. Like I was kind of in charge of the grants person. Like when we submit
I'm curious
to the state and say, here's all the stuff that you need, like half of the purchases you need from the share. Where it's so many pay money from the state and then in turn
they'll have like free
their pockets and their organization. It's good for us too, and yeah, it's just
like helps.
because they haven't done it yet.
But
But also it's because one of our legislators got this call from the project. Which I feel like that's like, yeah, which is like,
I would say in my level,
like to be so like unaware of how the thing works. I'm like, oh yeah, they have it. Like, they're fine actually.
So I
Yeah, they haven't had a budget currently.
Okay,
the funding that I have, so I would
Like September 1st.
work together and this is already really understand where policies
Do y'all feel like your organization
and other have connections
have like an advocacy lens to it? Like do y'all feel like like how do y'all feel like you are pushing forward like
trying to leverage like not as much money
when it comes to this area, there's a lot of people who are involved in
and also and it's just been a slow roll. Like there was some
where some entity can just kind of organize like very
and if
once you do that, you start strategic partnerships like hey, we're
that
the last phase that we're earlier today. Phone calls to government as yeah. Right? So you have like there's that said, hey, this week we're going to do a phone call campaign and all you guys call this.
Yeah, this year was the thing over the farmers markets, and Wake County has produce pantry, which is really good for buying back produce left over from the farmers market and then donating that to a food pantry. So the county allocates some funding for each of our 8 markets. So I'm doing like 2 others in the right. There's so many registered under the county yet, so that's been really good to help food banks get around too.
Because federal like those sources are annoying, but they actually recognize it unless they're most of what you're supporting is the benefits.
Trying to work a lot of things, especially with SNAP and cut, so these past 2 weeks have been kind of crazy.
Like they want to give you like $50,000. One of the things that they'll say is we don't want physical calories. Like you didn't how are you going to work? Like we can work there, but our money we want it to
they will just give
who's going to drive the truck to the market. So that's
that also that county goes directly to people who need it and to farmers who are selling it out of markets. But it makes me think like how can we continue a program maybe like that after people who may not have SNAP but are still food insecure to just like give that credit. So I think that silver lining of all this craziness is maybe like reforming our programs to do better and reform our audiences, but obviously this has to be funded. So we have a lot of questions with that too. It's just like if anyone can qualify, how will the funding go? But those are definitely 2 programs I think that work really well for people who need food and also just for farmers who are trying to sell markets.
It's scary.
right.
I know I don't have a lot of
Yes.
Right.
So,
Right.
Like, you're hitting the notes as far as there are about mobilizing people,
Right.
but I'm curious about what the there's so much in like there's so much like maybe even though
people are so and I feel like they just don't know who to talk to. But I was like, where to advocacy or
Grassroots comes up.
whether it's I'm curious if it's if that is something that is in the well of the Southeast about the Southeast. There are a lot of differences and it's something else. Bigger to speak size to the yeah, exactly. So it's like rich and poor. And I think that is, I don't have only to say that's like only one division, but I'm curious if it feels how it feels versus this kind of it's almost like a Southern culture thing where there's so much don't talk politics, culture, and I think that it's something for like nonprofits
Or like advocacy versus like lobbying.
yeah, and it's I mean
Yeah, like
there are legal things and there's other stuff too, but I wonder how much that stuff is
I think that's how also government help is really also has to be like these emergency food plans to try to host food drives all over the county centers. I did not realize how many county centers are tons, and the amount of support and just like you guys kind of getting your whole thing like it is overwhelming, which is great, but also very stressful. So me and another business, we've just been like coordinating with food pantries and county sites, and even St. Lawrence County actually hosting these drives, actually with that part, making sure that they're getting there.
maybe reminding ourselves of that.
So that's like a huge push as well. Ending all these federal things, but it does show how much want to help, and if they can hear
And also seeing like what they're doing. Like for example, like we're feeding America.
it's been something that I've done.
Feeding America. Feeding America is
These past 2 weeks.
I'm talking.
Coming to this
Feeding
role.
America's not a lot. So with Feeding America, they all go to roll. So we could do it too. I just don't about it. So you kind of like just copy someone else. Yeah. Right.
Which makes me wonder, it's like, then what are the opportunities for change? Like, it's clearly but you're having those events where there are some edges that you can move.
Yeah, so that's exactly like when I like with the
Even if we can't like
we're lucky enough that there's all these
what the conference too is yeah, as soon as the email like sent to the conference line and it was put my name on it and pressed send and then I got an email back for it. So
like businesses competing so we get the private sector mobilize to pay for all of this, but it would turn out that it's like $1 billion to recovery. So that's when we stepped back. At least wholesale selling wholesale.
I have a friend who like only sends them via mail. That's a friend who's but she will only send them by mail. So like, she's like, because I know that they have to put it in filing cabinet somewhere. Yes, but it is annoying that it's not just like, oh, we have like having 10,000 notes versus 10 million. It's like delicious. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So it's almost like they say no, they'll kind of go to for you. Yeah.
And right, what would it be to create advocacy letters that you could write and then send? So that was something that we did at the end of the semester. Which was really cool. And it was
So that skill is maybe, I've been thinking about.
Yeah, sending letters skills. And also like if you were wanting businesses that you want, which I think is powerful.
I mean, we do state level because
The feeling of like civic culture is help towards that versus the which is great though.
multinational as well in North Carolina, and the food policy council there, one of the things they're advocating for is that you would also, can you build apartments, can you per number of residents will have square footage of apartments? You know, and it was like, oh, like, you know, and that like basically changes the speed, but also changes like mentality of like when they're building, also building like
This feels like a million years ago. Like,
and so everything we talk about like our generation
you know, like where you were traveling, trying to figure out.
and I just always like
Like there was even like a time in North Carolina where this ended up going away, but it was like it had to be state, and then you would be treated as a state agency, but then also private organized. So their neighbors got them so this safety, or people enjoyed that really didn't happen anyways, but also like we're not going to be state funding, so it'll be better.
baked in that that's not the case, right? That's just
They will drive tribal communities are really
No, that's a total
I would say it's very sobering to
Yeah,
see federal employee recognition. Like just with budgeting cuts and like working on therapy, seeking out assistance is just like I understand like what all the change
how that could be
like unfortunately it's not like being in their power and trying to fix that like it's a very interesting perspective. I think
there's
No, that's just that whole
I think important to listen to story. Like, I was crossed my mind that I was just right. We've been talking about like advocating, like such a barrier also for them to start, but also because you're scared of any political or any potential repercussions of like the line of like what's advocacy, what's lobbying, what would put a target on us if everything changed, which they're always changing. Particularly when a lot of people we serve, business people are Hispanic, and some of them are not that we don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for our coalition, that's definitely important. Like there are both people in many organizations that well documents close, especially
and I think that
work, and just in general, like a lot of nonprofits and contributions are actually so that is a big issue, and we do that as
especially with like small
I think Marguerite spoke to that really well. Like the idea of, to some degree, if our coalition is like allying with white-led orgs that can be more visible or more like visible out loud without those kinds of personas. And to other degrees, it's like overwhelming. I don't know. It's like we also think about it through this one page post of my CEO that's always there, and it's like, and I think that the big body of the work that is like following under industry where we are trying to lives where we are exchanging resources and like trying to figure out where to go, and then every only if we're like tradition and then you see it and it's like right now like now they're looking to but that's like most of it, and it's like only every once in a while are you seeing lawmakers like saying like we need to do this now, or are we putting ourselves into positions and we work together to decide what's strategic and like
Protecting airports is like the biggest question. But it's just like, you're the expert. I guess like on what you're.
Yeah, I would also appreciate like I'm already forgotten the word of it. Mycelium. Like being cultivating yourself. So then and not fighting every kind of battle because there are battles like that's the whole point. Yeah, we're talking earlier about like the EDI was like and like a million years ago. It does, yeah. It really does. There have been a million tiny what feels like battles since then. They might get more challenging but like picking your battles.
It's true, because the strategy is like the flood control strategy is like intended to. Okay, gotta get back up.
I've gotten into farming to work in policy or like run for local offices, but I didn't want to like I wanted to work with sustainable agriculture policies, and I didn't want to like go into that without knowing it's like very and then I felt like
Time to come back together. Hello. Hi, everybody. Everybody look at me. Thank you so much for participating. I love when it's hard to stop people talking. That means that you were having a good conversation. And I am nosy, so I want to know what you were talking about. So, let me, if one person from each table could just share, this question is like, is it more strategic for your organization and like the organizations at your table to pursue state or federal advocacy at the moment? It also doesn't have to be one of those two options, but do keep it to 1 minute max. Okay, which table wants to start? Who's feeling brave? Yeah! Okay, I will give you the microphone because I'm supposed to. Here you go.
So we did go a little off script, and we seem to focus more on state level government advocacy, and we just said how, it's a challenge if you're not experienced with advocacy and doing it the right way. It can be a challenge, it can be a little imposing, but it's great to have resources where you can put in your name and your zip code, and you can send an email to your representative. So it's like working with organizations that can make advocating easy and making it accessible to everyone, and also kind of towing the line very carefully, because you want to support people, not put anybody at risk, protect those that you work for and work with, but also get the most out of your government representatives.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and that is exactly what NSAC does. A lot of my time is spent making those materials. I can go back to the other slide that has the link to that toolkit. But yeah, that's a great reason to become an NSAC member or to sign up for our action alerts, because we send them out all the time. More than you can probably take advantage of or have time for. So we do that. We try to make it easy, and we want you to be able to take advantage of that. Okay, somebody over here is brave.
I can do my best.
Yeah, you are. Look at you.
Yes.
So it's actually interesting. We went off script, but kind of in a similar direction as your table. I think a lot of us here at this table, are more like on-the-ground farmers, don't necessarily have a lot of experience with advocacy or easy avenues to get into advocacy. So we were just talking about the value of that outside organization that can help organize grassroots campaigns, because it's as someone who advocates, you can bring a farmer with you, to talk like in person, but also it's really powerful if you pair that conversation where you sit down with a farmer, talk about it, and say, and you've also been receiving all of these emails this week about people who've gotten all of these calls, right? So how to basically harness that collective voice of people who have a lot of experiences, who care, but who maybe don't know how to advocate. So I love that you guys are doing action.
Yeah.
So anything else to add? That was very decent.
Great, thank you for doing that.
Awesome. Okay, I'm sensing some courage over here as well. Somebody. There you go.
Okay, my perspective is a little different because I'm representing Wayne County Cooperative Extensions. This is more on the side of government currently and how we can be advocates. And I think generally being bipartisan is important, but in order to create programs, listening to our partners and using their stories and data to inform whatever programs we do is our greatest strategy that we could use. And I will just give a couple examples of what we're doing right now with the deficit of federal funding. So a couple of my programs that I've been trying to scale up are very grassroots oriented. I don't know if anyone's familiar, but we have Produce the Pantry at our farmers markets, where if someone buys extra produce, they can give it to the market manager and they will donate it to a local food bank. That is going to be very much so pushed heavily in these next coming weeks. And then we also have double bucks, but we're, instead of doing matching, because matching is going to be difficult if there's no money on a SNAP card, it'll just be an instant credit. And so making sure that we kind of adapt our programs to fit the current climate is really important, and listening to the people who are going to be impacted by them. I've also been working a lot on food drives and trying to get those around the county to help subsidize the need for more food in food banks. And I think just generally as a table, we talked about when the federal funding is gone, or just the federal government is very absent in our lives, local community steps up and grassroots becomes even more important. And so we've just kind of talked about our stories in general about how people have been on Facebook groups, churches, and neighbors are just trying to help each other in need, and it's really inspiring.
Yeah. It is inspiring. And I love that. Allow yourself to be inspired. Like, I come to conferences for that, like to get energized and like remember that, and to see all of you guys winning, and to remember that we are winning. So keep that in mind. You ready? There we go.
So yeah, I guess the big takeaway from our conversation was just, we're very different organizations. We've got a land conservancy and then state association of food banks. But this work is still so important to us, and I think it's important to share that with the stakeholders that we're working with, because we have very different perspectives and we have very different relationships that we can leverage. Whether it's with the State Department of Ag, as a food bank state association, we have a strong relationship that's different from the relationship that farmers or other food system organizations might have. So thinking about the different ways that we can approach this work and show our support for it was kind of where our conversation went.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow, so many different directions. I also, as we close, want to invite you to stay connected. Like, raise your hand if you spoke to someone that you'd like to hear more from. Yeah? Yeah, okay, great. So, listen, give that person your card, stay connected. We are here to, like I just said, like get inspired, but also to organize. So, I wonder what my last line is. This is the last line. So my email is here. Again, I'm actually going to go back to, oh boy, that's my smartphone. Back to this one. That is our Take Action link. And then I'll also be up here to chat about federal advocacy if you like. I have cards in my little Altoid case. And yeah, I hope that you have enjoyed the sessions today, and I'll see you at dinner. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yeah, I do. Basically all the writing. Currently by myself, yeah, but I hired a someone. Oh, okay. So yeah, so you do.
I was happy to see better.
Yeah, and I'm really just starting out.
Oh, really?
That's how I wanted to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, this is my old business card. It says grants administrator, so but everything else is the same. Yeah, so I wanted to connect and talk about it because grant writing is all that's a good thing happening here. We've been doing for a while a different type of fundraising, like kind of understand how it works because a lot of places don't have dedicated writers. They have different fundraising people and they spread the grants, which is whatever works for them. Lots of small grants, so like you have like government grants like $3,000, which is great. That kind of goes what I said earlier about like it actually works, which is awesome. Like, a lot of grants like you can do stuff that don't not just like right. Yeah, I'm curious how that works. Right. Yeah. Yeah, we like this is like 2009. It's like we've got a lot of relationships with like local churches and foundations. It's like my bosses like building relationships with places and like creating relationships with your like your funders. Like there's a grant that we do every year. That's $30,000 match for like our back to school campaign. So like, but they specialize in match, and they love that. So like, it's like how many, like what percent of donations were to new donors because there was room to yeah, it's pretty great. Have you worked with funders?
No, not at all. I'm coming from working in tech.
Oh, cool.
Software development. So
Where'd you get your funding? I just didn't know that, but I will. That was one of my tasks.
yes.